My name is Kayla. I'm 24 years old. And for 24 years I lived like a ghost inside my own home. I want to tell you something that still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. For over 2 decades I believed a lie. Not a small lie. Not something you can brush off and move on from. A lie so big, so deep, it shaped every single thing about me, how I walked, how I talked, how I looked people in the eye. Or didn't. I believed I was born to serve. That some people come into this world just to make other people's lives easier. That I was one of those people. I was wrong. But I didn't find that out until the day of my sister's wedding, when a man I had never met in my entire life looked at my face from across a crowded ballroom and started to cry. Before I continue, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. And if you're watching, drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to the story. Let me start from the beginning. 'Cause you need to understand what my life actually looked like before you can understand what happened next. We lived in a big house out in Westchester County, New York. 2 stories, a perfect yard, a driveway with 2 cars parked in it at all times. From the outside, the Henderson family looked like something out of a magazine. Robert Henderson, my so-called father, was a senior partner at a finance firm in Manhattan. He wore tailored suits and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. Cheryl, my so-called mother, ran a lifestyle blog that her friends talked about at book clubs. And then there was Ashley, my so-called sister, who was 27, beautiful, loud, and the absolute center of every room she walked into. And then there was me. I woke up every morning at 4:45 a.m. Not because I wanted to. 'Cause if breakfast wasn't on the table by 6:15, there would be consequences. I scrubbed the floors. I did the laundry. I ironed Robert's shirts until every crease was perfect. I prepped Cheryl's morning smoothie exactly the way she liked it. 2 frozen strawberries, half a banana, almond milk, no ice. If I added ice, she'd pour it down the sink and make me start over. Ashley slept until 10. Ashley had a room on the 2nd floor with a canopy bed and a smart TV and a closet that looked like a boutique. Ashley had a car, a credit card, a college degree from a private university, and a group of friends who came over on weekends and filled the house with noise and laughter. I slept in the basement. My room, if you could call it that, was a cot next to the water heater. There was 1 bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. My clothes were kept in a plastic bin. I had 2 pairs of shoes, one for working inside, one for going to the grocery store. That's it. I know what you're thinking. How does something like that even happen? How does a kid grow up that way and not say something, do something, tell someone? I'll tell you how. 'Cause from the very first moment I could understand words, Robert and Cheryl made sure I understood my place. Robert sat me down when I was maybe 5 years old and told me something I memorized like it was a prayer. Some children in this world are givers, he said, very calm, very quiet. And some are takers. You, Kayla, are a giver. That's just how God made you. And givers serve. That's not a bad thing. That's your purpose. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. The rules were written on a piece of notebook paper and taped inside my closet door. I still remember every single one. Rule 1, you do not eat at the family table. You eat in the kitchen after everyone is done. Rule 2, you do not call us Mom and Dad. You call us Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Henderson. Rule 3, you do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4, you do not speak to strangers or neighbors about family business. There was a leather strap in the pantry, behind the canned goods on the bottom shelf. I only needed to feel it twice before I understood those rules weren't suggestions. First time I was 6. I called Cheryl Mommy in front of her sister who was visiting. The second time I was 15. I'd saved up $22 from leftover change on grocery runs and walked nearly 4 miles to the nearest bus station. I was going to leave. I had no plan except to get out. Police brought me back the same night. No ID, they said at the door. No paperwork on her at all. Robert smiled his warm, charming smile and said, "She's our daughter. She has some emotional issues." "Thank you, officers." They left. Robert locked me in the basement for 4 days with nothing but water. When he finally opened the door, he crouched down to look me in the eye and whispered, "Without papers, you're nobody. You don't exist on paper, which means you don't exist at all. No one will ever believe a word you say. Do you understand me?" I understood. I didn't try to leave again for 7 years. Ashley was never mean to me the way Robert was mean to me. She didn't hit. She didn't threaten. She just didn't see me. I was part of the house, same as the dishwasher or the vacuum cleaner. Functional. Forgettable. "Kayla, grab my dry cleaning." "Kayla, there's a mess in my room." "Kayla, wash my car before Dylan comes over." When her friends were over, she'd introduce me with a little wave of her hand. "Oh, that's just our housekeeper," she'd say. Not sister. Housekeeper. Nobody ever questioned it. I guess it made sense to people from the outside. I looked nothing like the Hendersons. Robert and Cheryl and Ashley all had light brown hair, hazel eyes, the same wide smile. I had dark hair that curled at the ends and eyes so dark brown they were almost black. I had a different nose, different cheekbones, a different everything. I asked about it once when I was maybe 13. Cheryl looked at me for a long second, then slapped me across the face so hard my ear rang for an hour. "Stop asking stupid questions," she said and walked out of the room. I never asked again. When Ashley announced her engagement to a guy named Derek Calloway, the whole house went electric. Derek was 31, tall, good-looking, worked in commercial real estate. But the bigger deal wasn't Derek. The bigger deal was his dad, Marcus Calloway, CEO of Calloway Development Group out of Chicago, worth something in the range of $60 to $80 million, based on what I overheard Robert whispering to Cheryl at the dinner table while I stood in the kitchen doorway. "This is it," Robert said, swirling his wine. "This is how we get into that circle. Marcus Calloway is connected to every big player on the East Coast. If Derek is our son-in-law, we're in." Cheryl clasped her hands together like she was about to start praying. "We need to make sure nothing goes wrong." Nothing. The way she looked at me when she said that last part sent a cold feeling straight down my spine. 6 months of planning. 6 months of invitation lists and catering tastings and florist consultations and Cheryl's endless phone calls about centerpiece options. I did most of the actual work, the addressing of envelopes, the running of errands, the steaming of tablecloths, the organizing of guest lists. For 6 months, I let myself imagine just a little that maybe I'd get to be a bridesmaid. I'd seen the dresses. Dusty rose, floor-length, simple. I'd even tried one on in the mirror when no one was home, just for a second. 3 weeks before the wedding, Cheryl called me into the kitchen and sat down across from me with her coffee cup and her reading glasses and that practiced smile of hers. "We need to talk about your role at the wedding." My heart jumped. Am I walking with the bridesmaids? She laughed like I'd said something genuinely funny. "Kayla, sweetheart, you'll be helping with service. Passing appetizers, making sure the bar stays stocked, keeping an eye on the gift table." The words hit me like a door slamming in my face. "You want me to work the wedding. I want you to help." "There's a difference." She tilted her head. "You know how you get in social situations. Word. You'd be uncomfortable up at the altar in front of all those people. This way you're comfortable. You're useful. Isn't that better?" I didn't answer. I knew better than to argue. That night, I found the printed guest list on the kitchen counter. I read through every name on the family side. Robert Henderson, Cheryl Henderson, Ashley Henderson, Derek Calloway. I read it 3 times. My name wasn't there. Not anywhere. I was 24 years old and I didn't exist on my own family's wedding guest list. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private club in White Plains. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waitstaff in all black. Calloway family had reserved the whole terrace, Marcus and his wife Diane, Derek's older brother and his wife, a cluster of cousins and business associates. Cheryl dressed me herself that evening. Black dress, white apron. "You look professional," she said, adjusting the collar. "Stay in the background. Don't engage. If anyone asks, you're with the catering company." I carried a tray of champagne glasses through the crowd and kept my eyes down. I'd gotten very good at being invisible. Ashley spotted me near the bar and came over with her champagne already half empty. "Oh my God, Kayla, why are you dressed like that? You're not actually serving, are you?" Before I could answer, Cheryl appeared at my side like she'd been waiting there. "Ashley, honey, Kayla loves helping. It's just how she is. She gets anxious with all the attention, don't you, sweetie?" She patted my arm. "She's happiest behind the scenes." Ashley gave me a look I couldn't quite read, then drifted back toward Derek. And that's when I noticed him. Marcus Calloway, Derek's father, standing near the far railing with a glass of bourbon, watching me. Not glancing. Watching. His face was pale. His jaw was tight. There was something in his expression I'd never seen directed at me before. Like he recognized me. He walked over slowly. "Excuse me. What's your name?" "Kayla, sir." "Kayla." He repeated it like he was testing a memory. "Kayla Henderson?" "Yes, sir." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he asked a question that made the entire room tilt under my feet. "Do you know anything about where you came from? Before the Hendersons?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Cheryl was already crossing the room toward us, smile locked in place, eyes sharp as glass. Marcus excused himself and walked toward the parking lot, already pulling out his phone. I watched his shoulders. Watched him pace. Watched the way he ran his hand through his hair like he was trying to work something out. And I thought for just 1 second, this man knows something. The night before the wedding, I sat on my cot in the basement and held the only photograph I owned of myself with the family. I was 4 years old in it, standing at the very edge of the frame while Robert, Cheryl, and baby Ashley clustered together around a birthday cake. They were all touching each other. I was alone, half cut off, like an afterthought in my own photo. I'd never questioned it. Not really. Not out loud. But that night, I couldn't stop Marcus Calloway's face from coming back to me. The way he'd gone pale. The way he'd asked where I came from. And then something else hit me, something so obvious I couldn't believe I'd missed it for 24 years. Nobody ever told me a single real thing about where I came from. Not one concrete detail. Robert said my birth parents had been unfit. Cheryl said records had been lost. Different stories. Different excuses. And no papers. Not a single piece of paper with my name on it. What if that wasn't an accident? I pressed my palms flat against the concrete floor and sat with that thought for a long time. Upstairs, I could hear Robert laughing with his old friends from college. Cheryl toasting with her sisters. The house full of noise and light and life that had nothing to do with me. I didn't sleep. The wedding venue was a hotel ballroom in Westchester, the kind of place with 30-foot ceilings and chandeliers the size of small cars. Flowers everywhere, white and ivory and soft gold. 200 guests in their best clothes, filling those gilded chairs like they were at the opera. I came in through the loading dock. Catering manager pointed me toward the ballroom. Champagne service. Keep moving. Keep smiling. I took my tray and started circulating. I watched Ashley float down the aisle in her gown, ivory silk, cathedral train, the whole thing. I watched Robert dab at his eyes in the front row. I watched Cheryl hold his hand. I stood in the back of the room, tray in hand, 50 feet away from the family I'd spent 24 years serving. I let myself imagine for one moment what it would have felt like to sit in that front row. To be introduced as Ashley's sister. To hold a bouquet and stand at the altar and be someone. Then the ceremony ended, the room erupted in applause, and I went back to circulating champagne. That's when Marcus Calloway appeared beside me. "Kayla." His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I need to speak with you. Privately. Please." I looked toward the family table. Robert was watching us. His expression was something I'd never seen on his face before. Fear. Marcus led me to a side hallway off the main ballroom. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph. Old, worn at the edges, like it had been carried a long, long time. A young woman holding a newborn baby. Dark hair. Dark eyes, almost black. Eyes exactly like mine. "This is my sister," Marcus said. "Elena. And the baby is her daughter. Kayla Marie Calloway." My mouth went dry. 24 years ago, he said, his voice steady but barely, Elena's baby was taken from the maternity ward at Mercy General Hospital in Newark. She was 6 weeks old. Elena spent 7 years searching for her. She hired investigators. She worked with the FBI. She never stopped. He paused. She passed away 16 years ago. Ovarian cancer. But I always believed, I always knew, her daughter was somewhere out there alive. I shook my head slowly. "Mr. Calloway, I think you have me mixed up with." "Your eyes," he said. "That's Elena's nose. That's her jawline. I've been looking at that face in a photograph for 16 years, Kayla. I know her face." He reached into his other pocket and produced a small sealed plastic bag with a cotton swab inside. "Please, just let me test. It's a certified lab, the gold standard for DNA testing. Results in 72 hours. If I'm wrong, I will never bring this up again." His voice cracked. "But if I'm right, if you're who I think you are, then the people in that ballroom did something unforgivable. And you deserve to know the truth. People who stole you." I stood very still in that hallway and felt the words land in my chest like something had been waiting my whole life to hear them. "What do I need to do?" I asked. He opened the kit. "Just open your mouth." Before I could slip back into the ballroom, Robert's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist hard. He dragged me through a service corridor and shoved me against the wall beside a stack of folding chairs. "What did you say to him?" His breath was hot. His eyes were something I'd never seen before, wild, cornered. "Nothing. I didn't say anything. Why is Marcus Calloway asking questions about you? What does he want?" He shoved me harder. "I'm warning you, Kayla. If you say one word to anyone about this family, I will throw you out with nothing. No money, no clothes, no phone. You'll be on the street by morning. You understand me?" Cheryl appeared at the end of the hallway, heels clicking against the tile. She took one look at the scene and came toward me slowly, her champagne glass still in hand. "Whatever he told you," she said softly, "it's not true. We are your family. We took you in when nobody else wanted you. We kept a roof over your head and food in your stomach, and you would have been nothing without us. You understand that? Nothing." She reached out and fixed a piece of hair that had fallen out of my bun, gentle as a mother. "Now get back to work. And stay away from Marcus Calloway for the rest of the night." They walked away. And I stood there in that empty hallway, heart hammering, with a cotton swab already sealed in a bag inside Marcus Calloway's pocket. For the first time in 24 years, I had done something they couldn't undo. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I went back to the routine. 4:45 alarm. Kitchen by 5. Breakfast on the table by 6. Laundry sorted, floors swept, counters wiped. Cheryl criticized my coffee on day 2. Robert barely spoke to me. They were watching me more closely than usual, but they didn't know what I'd already done. I kept Marcus's number on a folded piece of paper tucked inside my shoe. Every morning I'd check that it was still there. On the third night, my phone, an old prepaid I'd bought with saved grocery change, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Results came in. Can you meet me tomorrow? 9 a.m. coffee shop on Maple Avenue, MC. I typed back one word. Yes. The next morning I told Cheryl I needed to pick up more dish soap and fabric softener. She was reading a magazine and barely looked up. Be back by 11. I have a yoga class. I walked out the front door, turned left instead of right, and kept walking toward the truth. Coffee shop was small. Brick walls, mismatched chairs, the smell of espresso so strong you could almost taste it before you walked in. Marcus was already there at a corner table. He looked like he hadn't slept. There was a manila envelope on the table between his hands. Kayla. He stood when he saw me. What does it say? He didn't answer right away. He slid the envelope across the table. I opened it slowly. Paper inside was full of technical language and reference numbers. I scanned it until my eyes landed on a section highlighted in yellow. Probability of biological relationship, 99.98%. Conclusion. The tested individual shares biological lineage consistent with the family line of Elena Maria Calloway, deceased. I read it 4 times. You're my niece, Marcus said. You're Elena's daughter. You're Kayla Marie Calloway. The room didn't spin exactly. It went very quiet. Like the whole world had paused to let me catch up. The FBI cold case from 2001 is being reopened, he continued. I contacted them the morning after the wedding. The investigation into Robert and Cheryl Henderson has already started. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. If they acquired you through an illegal network, and the early evidence suggests they did, they will be prosecuted. Federal charges. How much trouble are they in? His expression was careful. Human trafficking charges carry serious sentences, Kayla. Potentially 15 to 20 years. I sat back in my chair. 15 to 20 years. For 4 days in a basement without food. For a leather strap behind the canned goods. For 24 years of 4:45 a.m. alarms and concrete floors and being told I was born to serve. Marcus reached back into the envelope. There's one more thing. He pulled out a second document. Elena set up a trust fund for her daughter in 2004. She refused to give up hope that you'd be found. She named you specifically, Kayla Marie Calloway, as the only one who would receive the money, to be released the day you were found and proven to be her child. He pushed the paper toward me. The number at the bottom was $9,400,000. It's been growing since 2004, he said quietly. That's what's there now. I stared at it. This isn't about the money, he said. I want you to understand that. It's about justice. And it's about finally being able to tell Elena, wherever she is, that her daughter came home. I looked up at him. This man who had been a stranger 5 days ago and was now the closest thing to family I had ever known. What do I do next? I asked. Well, he said, and for the first time since the rehearsal dinner, he almost smiled. I think we set a trap. Marcus invited the Hendersons to his estate in Greenwich 2 weeks after the wedding. The official story was a business opportunity. Robert had been buzzing about it for days, telling anyone who'd listen that Marcus Calloway wanted to bring him into a new development deal. I knew this wedding would pay off, he kept saying at dinner, genuinely glowing. I knew it. Cheryl spent 3 days picking her outfit. She landed on a pale green Escada blazer, pearl earrings, hair freshly blown out. She was practically vibrating the whole drive there. I was instructed to come and help with refreshments. I didn't argue. When we pulled up to the estate, 12 rooms, iron gates, a circular driveway lined with perfectly shaped hedges, Robert let out this low, appreciative whistle. What do you think that runs? He murmured to Cheryl. 8-9 million? At least, she said, already rehearsing her gracious smile. We were shown into a sitting room with high ceilings, heavy curtains, and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marcus greeted us warmly. Derek and Ashley were on their way back from their honeymoon, arriving shortly. Robert shook Marcus's hand. Cheryl kissed his cheek. Nobody noticed the man in the gray suit standing quietly in the room off to the left. Nobody noticed the woman with the folder on her knee near the window. I noticed them. Marcus caught my eye across the room and gave the smallest nod. It was time. Tea service came out. Cheryl accepted her cup with both hands and crossed her ankles like she was auditioning for a part. "This home is just stunning," she said warmly. "Truly, Marcus. The craftsmanship alone." "Thank you." He settled into his chair. "I actually wanted to talk to you about something before Derek arrives. Something about Kayla." Robert's cup didn't quite make it back to the saucer clean. It rattled. "Kayla." His voice was careful. "Yes." Marcus gestured toward me. "She's been part of your family for quite some time. Since she was an infant, I believe you've said?" "That's right." Cheryl jumped in fast. "We adopted her when she was just a few months old. Took her in, gave her a home, everything. She's been very interesting," Marcus said. "Because I had my attorney check with the county. There's no adoption paperwork on file for any child named Kayla Henderson. Not in Westchester. Not in any neighboring county." Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. "Records get lost," Robert said, his voice flat now, the warmth completely gone. "Especially in private adoptions. That's not uncommon. I also checked with the state of New Jersey. No birth certificate. No social security number issued at birth. No hospital records. No documentation anywhere that establishes her legal identity." Marcus opened the leather portfolio beside his chair. "Which raises a very interesting question, Robert. Where did she come from?" Robert stood up. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I will not sit here and be." "Sit down." Marcus's voice didn't get louder, but something in it made Robert sit. Marcus laid two documents on the coffee table. The DNA report and the old FBI case file stamped cold case in red ink. "This," he said, pointing to the DNA report, "confirms that Kayla is a 99.98% genetic match to my late sister Elena. Her daughter. A daughter who was taken from Mercy General Hospital in Newark in 2001. He tapped the case file. "This is the cold case report. It's been sitting in a federal filing cabinet for 24 years. As of last week, it's been reopened." Cheryl's teacup slipped out of her hand and shattered on the floor. "We didn't," Robert's voice cracked. "We were told she was." The door to the side room opened. Two people walked through. One man, one woman, both in dark suits, both holding badges. Robert Henderson. Cheryl Henderson. The man's voice was steady, practiced. "I'm Special Agent Torres with the FBI. This is my partner, Agent Walsh. You are both under arrest on suspicion of human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent." Robert ran. He actually ran. He made it maybe 4 steps before Agent Torres caught his arm and turned him around, and I watched the man who had terrorized me my entire life press his face against a wall and cry while the handcuffs clicked shut. Cheryl didn't run. She folded. She dropped onto the sofa and buried her face in her hands and wailed. "Kayla, please, we took care of you, we did, we loved you." I walked toward her slowly. "You made me sleep on a concrete floor," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You told me I was born to serve. You took my name. You took my mother from me." She looked up at me with mascara streaming down her face. "We saved you." "From what?" I asked. "From a family that actually wanted me?" I turned around and walked out the front door. Ashley and Derek pulled into the driveway just as I came out. She jumped out of the car, eyes wide, already confused by the cars parked outside. "What's going on? Where are Mom and Dad?" I stopped in front of her. Ashley. I took a slow breath. I'm not your housekeeper. I never was. My name is Kayla Marie Calloway, and your parents are being arrested. The trial lasted 5 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Investigators traced Robert and Cheryl back to an underground adoption network that had been operating out of New Jersey in the early 2000s. Babies and young children, most of them taken from hospitals or vulnerable families, sold to buyers for cash. Robert and Cheryl had paid $18,000. They found the receipt, handwritten in code but traceable. My name appeared in a transaction ledger beside a dollar amount and a delivery date. I was listed like a line item. Robert maintained his innocence through the entire trial, claiming he'd been deceived, told I was an orphan with no family. His defense attorney argued he'd been trying to do a good thing. The jury wasn't buying it. Cheryl testified against him, claiming he'd manipulated her, that she'd wanted to do better by me but was afraid. The jury wasn't buying that either. I testified twice. Both times I sat in that witness box and told the truth slow and clear, and I watched the people in the jury box listen to every word. The sentence came down on a Tuesday. Robert Henderson, 19 years in federal prison. Cheryl Henderson, 13 years. All their money and property frozen while the legal cases moved forward. The house in Westchester, the 2 cars, the savings accounts, all of it seized. Ashley filed for divorce from Derek 3 weeks after the sentencing. She said in the filing that she couldn't handle the association with what her parents had done. Derek's family, Marcus's family, quietly cut all ties with the Hendersons. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Ashley called me 8 months after sentencing. I almost didn't pick up. I sat there watching her name on my screen for a long time before I answered. Kayla. Her voice sounded nothing like the Ashley I grew up under. She sounded smaller. Tired. I've been thinking a lot about, I owe you an apology. A real one. I knew things weren't right. I knew you weren't just a housekeeper. I knew you slept in the basement and her voice broke. I never said anything. I never did anything. And I'm so sorry. I let the silence sit for a moment. Why didn't you? I asked. Not angry. Genuinely curious. Because I was scared of them. And because it was easier not to see it. A pause. That's not a good enough reason. I know that. No, I said. It's not. Another long silence. Is there anything I can do? She asked. Anything at all? I thought about that. About all the mornings I'd been up at 4:45 while she slept. All the times her friends had come over and she'd waved in my direction and said, "That's just our housekeeper," without batting an eye. All the years of silence that had cost me everything. Keep working on that apology, I said finally. And when it feels like enough, you'll know. I didn't hang up angry. I hung up honest. The inheritance came through 4 months after the trial ended. Marcus's attorneys had worked through every required step, court orders, FBI confirmation, proving who I really was, until the trust was officially activated. The day the paperwork was finalized, Marcus drove me himself to the bank. We sat in a quiet office on the upper floor. A woman in a blazer laid documents in front of me and walked me through investment choices and how to manage the money going forward. The bottom of the first page in plain black type. Beneficiary, Kayla Marie Calloway. Trust balance, $9,718,442. Status active. I read it 7 times. Marcus watched me read it. She never stopped believing, he said quietly. She told me once, the year before she got sick, that wherever her daughter was, she was going to find her way home. She just knew it. I couldn't speak for a minute. I just nodded. Marcus moved me into a guest suite at the Greenwich estate. My own room, windows looking out over a garden, a real bed with real sheets, a bathroom I didn't have to share with anyone. The first night, I walked around the room for over an hour just touching things. Curtains, the windowsill, the soft carpet under my feet, reminding myself it was real, that I was allowed to be here, that no one was going to knock on the door before dawn and tell me to get to work. I still woke up at 4:45 sometimes. Old habits. But instead of creeping upstairs in the dark to scrub someone else's kitchen, I'd sit by the window with a cup of coffee I made for myself, and I'd read. Marcus connected me with a program for adult survivors of trafficking, tutors, counselors, educational support. I started from basics and moved fast. Turned out all those years of reading whatever I could get my hands on, old magazines, instruction manuals, whatever Cheryl left lying around, had given me more of a foundation than I realized. A year later, I got the letter. Rutgers University. Full scholarship through the Bridge to Justice Foundation, a program supporting survivors of trafficking and family abuse. I held that letter in my hands and cried so hard I had to sit down on the floor. Good crying. Kind that comes out of somewhere that's been locked tight for too long. I found the letter from Elena in the estate archives 6 months after I moved in. Marcus had kept it in a box with the old FBI correspondence and the photographs and everything else from those years of searching. It was handwritten on personal stationery dated 2002, the year after I was taken before Elena got sick. My darling Kayla, if you ever read this, I want you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. From the first second they put you in my arms, I knew you were something extraordinary. I don't know where you are or what's happened to you, but I believe with everything I have that you're okay, that you're somewhere warm, that someone is taking care of you. I'm not going to stop looking. I want you to know that. No matter how long it takes, I am coming for you. You are loved. You are wanted. You belong to me and I belong to you. All my love, always, Mom. I read it 4 times before I could even breathe right. She had loved me. A woman I never got to meet, a woman who was gone before I ever got the chance. She had loved me so completely that she spent her last years looking for me and set aside nearly $10 million for the day I came home, just in case she wasn't there to see it. I went to visit Robert and Cheryl once. 9 months after the sentencing. My therapist told me not to. Marcus told me not to. But I needed to close something. The federal facility was in upstate New York. Fluorescent lights. Cold concrete. A metal table with bolts in the floor. Robert was brought in first, older, hollowed out, his whole posture different from the man who used to command every room he walked into. Cheryl came next. No jewelry. No tailored anything. Just a face that had aged 10 years in 9 months. They sat across from me. You came, Cheryl whispered. Her eyes were already filling. I'm not here to forgive you, I said. Not today. Maybe not ever. That's not what this is. I looked at both of them, one at a time. I'm here because I needed to say something out loud to your faces in a place where you can't walk away. Robert stared at the table. You told me I was born to serve, I said. You told me I was nothing without you. You took my identity, my childhood, and my mother. You made me believe for 24 years that I was less than human. I kept my voice steady. But you were wrong. You were always wrong. I wasn't born to serve anyone. I was stolen. And I'm done carrying that for you. Cheryl started crying. Robert kept staring at the table. I stood up. I'm not coming back, I said. Not because I'm angry. Because I've got things to do. I walked out into the cold air and got into Marcus's car, and I didn't look back once. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Rutgers. It's small. A desk, a bed, a window that looks out over the quad. My textbooks are stacked on the shelf above the desk. My acceptance letter is framed and hanging on the wall. Some mornings I still wake up at 4:45 from 24 years of muscle memory. But now when I do, I make coffee, sit by the window, and read my psychology textbooks in the quiet before the rest of the campus wakes up. I'm studying to become a therapist, specifically to work with survivors of trafficking and family abuse. I want to sit across from someone who has been told their whole life that they are worthless, that they were born to carry other people's weight, that they don't deserve a seat at the table, and I want to tell them from personal experience that it's not true. I want to be the person I needed when I was 5 years old, sitting alone at the edge of a photograph. On my nightstand, I keep two things. The first is my official birth certificate, Kayla Marie Calloway, born January 14, 2001, at Mercy General Hospital, Newark, New Jersey. Mother, Elena Maria Calloway. The second is Elena's letter. The one she wrote to me the year after I was taken, when she still believed she was going to find me. I read it every single morning. She was right. She was always right. I did find my way home. Just took a little longer than either of us hoped. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. I know it's a heavy one. If any part of this hit close to home for you, if you've ever been made to feel like you were born to be small, like you didn't deserve to take up space, I want you to hear this directly. You were not born to serve someone else's life. You were born for your own. Stories like mine happen more than people want to believe. Every year, thousands of missing children cases remain open. Every day, someone somewhere is being told they're worth less than they actually are. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about people who found their way back to themselves. More in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.